So, before we get started today, I really want to let you know, really want to make you aware that today's podcast is not for children. And I'm not saying you should shield your children from talking about sex, talking about healthy relationships, talking about healthy boundaries. But I'm going to go into some things today that are not typical, right? They're not typical of this podcast. So I want to give you that preemptive warning before, you listen to what I have to say on these subjects. Today I'm going to be talking about my sexual abuse, how that impacted my relationships, my sexual relationships, my friendships, all of those things. And I'm going to be talking about some stuff with Freemasonry. I'm going to be talking about all these kind of things. And I just want you to, really settle in, prepare your minds, and really allow things to flow, just the way they might. So the reality of it. So I was molested, and my grandfather showed me Freemason. As I've told you guys, I was sexually abused starting at the age of 3, and I don't know when that sexual abuse ended. It was from a cousin who was at least 30 years my senior, and so it was in fact molestation. His name was Craig. There was no, I did nothing to deserve that. I did nothing to bring that about on myself. However, the consequences of that experience were mine to correct. I had to then correct and rewire my own brain in order to hopefully one day have a healthy, happy, successful life. See, what people don't realize is that when you experience trauma at such an early age, especially between the ages of 2 and 4, your mind and your body really are at a disconnect. So what does that mean? That means I don't see the world like everybody else does. And I never did. So, for example, the reason I struggled in school so much was a few things. One, I didn't feel safe. If human beings do not feel safe, they cannot learn. That's been proven in study after study after study. You may not realize this, but I am a certified trauma and resilience practitioner. So I've done a lot of work about complex trauma and understanding it, and not just for myself, but for those I work with. And I also have some training in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which deals with the subconscious mind and how our subconscious impacts our day-to-day thoughts and things of that nature. So I want you to understand, I'm not just saying these things from the perspective that, oh yeah, this guy thinks this thing. No, I know this thing because studies have shown this thing. But let's get back to the story. So Craig molested me 3 to God knows whatever age. It happened twice a year. It happened every October or every September and every May. And that was the only time in my life that I knew that there would be consistency, right? I knew that, for example, my mom would take care of dinner, my dad would go to work. Those things I knew. But as far as planned activities in life, right, those were the only 2 times a year I knew planned activities were going to happen. And I also knew that when those planned activities happened, that I was going to get hurt. So that's how my brain was wired at that point, right? My brain was wired to say, when you see planned activities coming, you are going to be hurt. So you need to be on guard. So while everybody else looks at planned activities like vacations and things like that as something fun, it triggers my amygdala. It triggers my brain to understand like, oh, no, this is bad. This is bad. Be careful. Run away. That's what my brain is telling me. Now, I've done a lot of work on myself to understand that that's not actually the way I now process life. But for a very long time, that's how I process life. And no matter how much that lack of planning hurt me, right, I couldn't overcome that because it was a deep subconscious belief that I held. And so let's go get back to the relationship piece of this thing now. So, right. So there was Craig. Then at 10 years old, I had a brother-in-law who is now deceased. And there was a babysitter watching his kids before he went to work or before he went to do whatever he was doing. I don't know. And he told her, he said, hey, go in there and make Matt a man. I was 10 years old. This young lady was probably 16. She was a white lady, a white girl. She had stringy blonde hair. She had a little tan to her, but not much of one. And that's all I can tell you about her as far as her physical appearance. But that played into a major piece of me, and I'll come back to that later. But the only thing I remember from that interaction with that young lady is two very important things. One, I learned that I could satisfy and please a woman very easily, right? Because I remember satisfying and pleasing her. But that was a downside, because for years and years and years after that, I was trying to undo that trauma by continuing to put myself in that same position. And I never understood that. The other thing I learned about from that young lady is that's why I like lingerie, right? I like when women wear lingerie. That's sexy to me, which is nothing wrong with that, right? But again, I had to understand why I like lingerie, why I like when women wear lingerie. I liked it because, again, it was fulfilling that part of me, that trauma that I was trying to overcome. And so we fast forward to when I was 16. When I was 16, I met a young lady, and I'm not going to use her name, right? Actually, I'm not going to use anybody's name, just out of respect for them and respect for, where we're at. And so when I was 16, she was 26. She was from California. She was a white girl, blonde hair. And in my world, where I come from, that was like the holy grail, right? Sleeping with somebody who was from a woman who was from California was like the holy grail of people you could sleep with. And you have to understand, I was overweight, and to me, I wasn't very worthy. I wasn't very attractive. So the fact that I could sleep with her, well, that was just amazing. The reality of it is, though, is that because she was 16, or because I was 16 and she was 26, there was an imbalance of power. And so that's how that became sexual abuse. There was an imbalance of power because she held all the cards and I held none. So, we're going to fast forward even more, right? We're going to fast forward to somebody when I turned, I think I was 21, I met online. Now, she was nothing like these other people, right? She was nothing like the women I described. As a matter of fact, I'm not exactly sure what drove me to that relationship other than just getting away from my current life, right? I liked sunshine. I liked new opportunities. I liked the opportunity to live life in a new way, in a way that's always exciting and wonderful and fun. And so I met her, and I met her family, and her father said, "Hey, come work for me in this group home." And I, like any 21-year-old kid who gets an opportunity, well, I took it. And so I was in a relationship with that young lady for 3-4 years. And so with that, right, with that came, I found myself really in a predicament because, she had experienced sexual abuse herself. And so she wasn't interested in intercourse, right? I also wasn't interested in intercourse because, well, honestly, I didn't find her attractive. I'm just going to be honest. I just didn't find her attractive. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be cared about. I wanted to have a sense of support. That was why I was with that young lady. And so, we went 4 years, something to that effect, 4 years of being together without ever having sex. Yeah, we had oral sex a few times, but it wasn't sex. And it wasn't intimate. It was, I do this for you, so you get off, you do this for me, so I get off, and boom, that's all there was to it. And so, I think back to her telling me about her abuse and how it happened and when it happened. And, again, I'm not using her name, but it happened on a school bus. Her father was a middle school counselor, so they very much just brushed it under the rug. And while I can look at that now and say that was disgusting, and I could never respect somebody who would just brush sexual abuse under the rug, I am disgusted by that, because everybody deserves to have their voice heard. Everybody deserves to share their story when and if they want to. So, then we go to my ex-wife. And so my sexual relationship with her was doomed from the start. So let me give you a little background on that. When I moved to Ohio from Colorado, I had a decent job. I had a decent life. But I moved on the premise of being with my ex-wife. It was very clear. That was very, it was very out there. However, once I moved to Ohio, she explained to me that she had an incurable STD. And, in her defense, she did tell me this before we had a sexual relationship. She also told me this, she also explained that it had come from a relationship a long time ago. It wasn't anything recent. And so, but with that information, I could never be attracted to her at all. Now, there were points, before this moment that I thought she was beautiful. I thought she was amazing. But the moment she told me this, I was disgusted. And I wasn't disgusted because of what it was. I was disgusted because she chose not to tell me that until after I had uprooted my entire life to move to be with her. And then she decides to share that information with me. I feel like that was completely disrespectful and completely lacked any type of love or self-respect or anything. So, and she was from a small town, so I can understand why she wouldn't want that information just to get out, right? But when you're talking about someone, when you're talking to someone, it's very important that you have those conversations. At the very least, you owe them that, especially before they just uproot their whole lives. But I would come to learn later years that uprooting a life was not anything that she would hesitate to do, even anybody's life. It just didn't matter. It was, her attitude was very me. And so naturally, I think it's pretty logical to say that I had no desire to be with her sexually. But that showed. Our sexual relationship was horrible. It was absolutely wretched. And again, for me personally, it was tying that sexual abuse part into the fact that, well, you started off our sexual relationship based on a lie. And again, that's pretty disgusting. And so much of I remember another time I said, hey, I need you to start taking this medicine because I'm protecting myself. I'm protecting you. Yes, I'm doing things to protect myself, but I need you to take the extra step to protect me as well. And she got angry. She went into a rage and she started screaming and yelling and cussing and hitting and it was really bad. Now, in retrospect, I can see that the reason she behaved in such a way is because she had avoided the truth for so long that when I brought the truth to her attention, it was now inescapable. It was now something that she couldn't avoid any longer. And so I'm sure that's part of where that rage came from. Not to mention, again, the way she was raised. Those things played into it. She saw her dad being rageful and wrathful. She experienced that her entire life. Every man she had ever been with before me, according to her, treated her badly. And we're going to dive into that a little bit more later on, too, down the road as far as relationships go. But as for now, this is about me and my part of the story. But we'll get to her story more a little bit later on. And, so fast forward, right? As our relationship developed, I continued to grow. My opinion is she stayed very stuck in her mindset. And so as I looked at things, I very much took time and considered like, okay, well, this isn't what I want. This is not what I want. And I deserve better than be treated like this. And eventually we got to a point where, and it came with a long road, a very long road. But we got to a point that our relationship just never worked out. And it was a very, very toxic relationship on all ends. And as a matter of fact, even as a co-parent, our relationship is still very toxic. And she still displays the same behavior she displayed way back then. An example of that is one day I was supposed to pick up my daughter from school, and I drove 7 hours to pick up Journey from school. Or 6.5 hours, to pick up Journey from school to spend the weekend with her. And her mom picked her up out of school midday and put down family problems on the paperwork. Just withdrew her from school, so I couldn't see her. There was another time that I drove 6.5, 7 hours to see Journey perform in an orchestra concert. And her mom tried to help make her leave halftime before she could say hi to me. And her mom then told her, hey, you're not allowed to talk to your dad, or you're not allowed to hug him. And that's just a total lie. It's was never a part of the case, never a part of the situation. And so when Journey shared these things with her lawyer and the courts and things of that nature, her mom really didn't, or not her mom, but the courts really took no action on that. They really just overlooked that. And so, part of my story is about talking about the family courts and how wrong they are and how messed up they are. But again, we're going to dive much deeper into that whole system much later down the road. I've had the opportunity to sit and talk with family court judges in that system. I've had the chance to understand and learn that in that same family court system that I was in, they locked a young black man up for 4 years despite having evidence that he never committed the crime. He ended up suing him for millions of dollars. But again, that's just the culture of that courthouse and the culture of that community. But again, we'll talk about that later on. I'm sorry, my brain is going squirrely right now because there's so much coming out. But that is the reality. So I had to navigate my feelings and all these things so that I could get better and eventually one day become the man that I needed to become and that I wanted to become. Now I talked about the STD a little bit, and I took tests, and I made sure that I never contracted it. And I'm very thankful to God for that, because frankly, without that, I would be, I don't know where I would be. I don't know how much that would destroy me or crush me. But, one thing you'll learn about me is I try and be somebody of integrity. I make a lot of mistakes. I mess up a lot, and I wish I didn't make some of the mistakes I make. But I knew for me that if I contracted that STD, and I didn't have myself checked and I didn't take care of myself, that I would put everybody I was with in jeopardy after that. And so I wasn't willing to do that. I was never willing to do that. And that's it's a very humbling experience. Because, you know what you know and you know what you don't know. But one thing I know is that I wasn't ever going to do anybody the way she did me. And that's one thing I knew. So fast forward to my next relationship. It was with a different young lady. This relationship really started when her and I were separated. And my ex-wife and I were separated, excuse me. And so, this young lady, she had her own issues. She had her own demons. But the reality of it is that she taught me that I wanted to be loved. She taught me that I wanted to be respected. She taught me that I wanted intimacy. She taught me that I cared. She taught me how I cared. And she taught me how deep my love could go. Now, at that point in my life, I wasn't ready for that type of relationship. I wasn't the man I am today. And so I walked in integrity. I walked in honesty. So she knew about my ex-wife. She knew about the whole situation. There was nothing that was hidden from her. And that always served me well. But I have to admit that it probably hurt her a lot, knowing that she was the second choice. Knowing that, it was what it was. And so fast forward, to the intimate parts of that relationship. There was one night where we just laid there, and she laid on top of me naked, and it was such a deep, intimate connection in that very moment. It was almost spiritual, right? And for me, that was the first time I had ever felt that kind of connection in my entire life, ever. I had plenty of one-night stands before that, and I had, done a couple things I'm not exactly proud of, but that moment taught me about how much intimacy and how much connection actually meant to me. So we fast forward yet still, right? And we go to another relationship that would happen down the road. And again, I need you to please understand, this is not the man I am anymore. I have grown immensely since this point, but this is what it is. By this point, I'm divorced from Journey's mom. I am kind of a free agent. and I'm just kind of doing my thing. I'm just kind of partying and just having fun. And so we're at the house, and we're at a house, and we're all just hanging out, having a good time, whatever. And there was a girl who came in, and this woman, I say girl, but she was a woman. She was several years younger than me, maybe, 9 years younger than me, because I was 32 at this point, 31 at this point, somewhere in there. But she was the epitome of the young lady who sexually assaulted me when I was 10. And so I looked at her. And I said, I'm gonna fuck you tonight. And she chuckled it off and kind of brushed it off. I said, no, I'm dead serious. And she said, oh yeah. She said, what makes you so special? I said, I'm different. I said, everything about me is different. I said, give me 10 minutes and I'll show you. And then I said, why don't you go out there and hang out in the garage, because that's where everybody was partying at, kicking it at. This was her and I in the kitchen at this moment. And so I'm like, hey, go on outside, have some fun, and I'll join you. And just in about 10 minutes, I'll tell you something about yourself that you never knew, or that nobody else here knows, or that I certainly shouldn't know. And she laughed it off and walked away. So, I go to do whatever I was doing in the house, and then I joined them back outside in the garage, and sure enough, I sat back and I watched her for 10 minutes, and I was like, oh, I see you experienced this trauma. I see you're guarded in this way. I see this things happen. Now, I didn't put it in a therapeutic way when I was talking to her, right? Because, when you're trying to sleep with somebody, therapeutic measures are not always the best way to get to that goal. But I did break it down for her in a way that she understood. And I said, oh, this is what I see. This is what I see. This is what I see. I said, now tell me I'm wrong. And she laughed, uncomfortably so. And she said, you're right. And that was it. It was go time from there. And so it was a very short, it wasn't exactly a one night stand. There was a couple nights we were together, but not very many. And so, one night we were having sex, and long story short, she had lost a child. And so she was very apprehensive about having another, obviously. And that clearly wasn't my goal anyway. But I came inside her, and immediately she was triggered. She was in panic mode. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? And I'm like, the fuck are you talking about? I'm like, chill out, relax, calm down. Ain't no big deal. I can't afford to get pregnant. I can't afford to have a baby. I can't. And she went from that hyper state of arousal, or, that hyper state of, being panicked, right? Because we all know that state when we get elevated and we get scared, and it just comes off really bad. And I'm looking at her like, man, bitch, if you don't calm down. And again, please understand, this is not the way I talk to people. This is not the way I look at people. But this is where I was at during that time in my life. And so I'm like, yeah, whatever, calm down, chill out, go relax. And she was like, just take me home. I'm like, I'm not taking you anywhere. I'm like, you got here, you get yourself home. I was very cold, and I was very, very hurtful, right? I just didn't care. And so fast forward, she's asking me, and I stepped away for a second. And I looked at the situation and said, I have the ability to make a choice. I can choose to help this young lady and get her home and make sure that she's taken care of and this panic can be calmed. Or I can let her sit here and suffer. And in retrospect, to me, in my mind, in that moment, I had the power to undo the abuse that was done to me. I could stop and I could help this young lady, or I could just continue about my own power and control ways and have no concern for her. So what do y'all think I did? The truth is I got in the car, I had to actually go borrow one because I didn't have a car at that time. And I took her home. And the next day we got her to plan B, just in case she was pregnant. And it was a wash, and it was all smooth. And, so recently, within the last 2 years, I reached out to that young lady and I said, thank you. I said, you don't know this, but you're the reason that my marriage is what it is. You're the reason that, I was able to become the man that I am. And that was just mind blowing, right? That was just earth shattering to her because she couldn't believe it. She couldn't correlate that connection. But for me, the connection was very clear. And so fast forward yet more, at this time, Stacy and I, about this time, Journey and I, we're talking, we're back on good terms. This was about the point where she told me that her daughter, Jaden, her biological dad, had came back into the picture. And I asked her, I said, did he apologize for being gone? She said no, and I threw my phone and I broke it. So we had developed a bit of a friendship at this point. I don't even know how that's possible, considering the fact that, she had taken Jaden away from me and all the things that had transpired between us. I don't know. But we became friends on some level. And through that becoming friends process, I gave her the opportunity. I said, if you want to ask me anything about my life, anything about anything I've ever done to you as far as cheating on you or whatever, now's the chance to do that. I can't promise you this opportunity will ever happen again, but if you want to know the truth, I'm here to share it. And she turned me down. She didn't want to know the truth. And the truth was, if I'm going to be honest, once I found her cheating on me, all bets were off. There was no respect, there was no love, there was no caring, there was no concern as far as a relationship was concerned. Now I did care about her as my friend, but I didn't care about her as in a romantic way. It would never be that again. And that really came to a head one night when I went to visit the girls at her apartment, and I went to visit, Journey and Jaden, and I was having fun, just playing, being a dad, right? And she tried to get me to have sex with her, and I was like, hey, no, I'm good, not interested. And so I was just trying to draw a very clear line, like, I don't want this type of relationship with you ever again. And I wanted my family. I wanted to be a part of my family's life. But I didn't want a romantic relationship with her. And, so I think she knew that. And I'm, I appreciate that. I appreciate that she was aware of that and understood that. But however, she had to do work on herself that she wasn't willing to do. And that became evident very clearly just a few years later when she involved herself with Jaden's dad, Jaden's biological father. But again, this is my story and we're sticking to that. And we'll get to them and that whole situation later because it's a ride, y'all. I'm going to tell you that. It's a ride. But the reality of it is that, fast forward, the reality of it is that I wasn't with anybody for many years. For all the years from 2018 when I got custody of Journey, actually it was 2019 when I actually got custody of her, but her mom left in 2018. I just didn't have the money for an attorney until 2019 because she left in December. December 5th, I believe, was the day she left Journey behind permanently. And so I didn't get money for an attorney until February, somewhere in there. But I had custody of my daughter within 4 hours of paying my retainer, which tells you how messed up and how crooked the system is. The judge was appalled. He was absolutely appalled at her behaviors. He couldn't believe that a mother would leave her child, especially a social worker, would leave her child behind with a babysitter while she went to do what she was going to do. And I'm very proud of Journey because Journey has since been able to look at her and I don't know if she's forgiven her because I think you have to do a lot of work in order to forgive somebody for a travesty that big. But she definitely understands her mom's logic. And I'm super proud of that because I've been encouraging Journey to understand everybody's logic her whole life, right? And, so anyway, fast forward to 2022 when I met my current wife, Ashley. Our sexual relationship has always been good. It's always been healthy. It's always been wonderful. But the reality of it is that there were moments that weren't wonderful. There were moments that weren't good. There were moments that weren't healthy. But however, by her communicating what her needs and what her wants were, I could overcome that. I could really overcome that, the trauma that I had experienced and how it impacted my relationship with her. So I'm going to keep this real brief. And, so like, for example, I'm a little rough sexually speaking. I'll be honest with you. I like to get in some things. I like to choke and I like to whatever. And, one night after making love to my wife, she looked at me and she said, that was pretty rough. She said, you was rough on me last night, and it hurt me. And I say this with a deep shame and regret. I apologize because I never wanted to hurt my wife in any way, shape, size, or form. And I had to understand, I had to make the connection between my trauma and the things I had experienced and my need for power and control as far as my sexual partners were concerned. And in the past, everybody had just kind of accepted it. They just kind of went with the flow of it. They I don't know if they enjoyed it or not, but they certainly didn't complain or didn't tell me that I had hurt them. And to be honest with you, I don't know that would have mattered. I think if somebody in my past would have told me, hey, you hurt me in this way, as far as sexually speaking goes, I would have been like, okay, well then move on. Like, this is what I want. This is what I want. So you can either be a part of it, you cannot. That's your choice. But it don't have nothing to do with me. Keep it pushing. And I know that's a really harsh thing to say, but love changes people. When you love somebody, you really find out the parts of yourself that are no longer beneficial, and you get rid of them. And so there was another episode, with my wife. And it was more along the lines of, I was drinking one night and, I said, bitch, I called her a bitch. And again, my wife looked at me and said, Matt, that hurt me because I would have never expected that from you, because that's not who you are. That's not how you treat me. And I don't know if you can hear my voice quivering right now, but I'm hurt by that. I'm hurt that I did that, right? I'm hurt that I treated my wife in a way that made her think less of me. And so, fast forward again, I worked to correct that behavior, and I changed it. And if you talk to my wife today, she'll tell you very clearly that if I tell you I'm going to change something, then I change it. That's all there is to it. I don't care how right or wrong it may be, or how much I want it or don't want it. If I'm hurting somebody, I care about, I'm going to change it. Even this podcast I'm recording right now, I've recorded just 3-4 times, not to say Journey's mom's name. The reason for that is just out of respect, right? I could really care less about about the way she feels. That's not my concern. And frankly, that comes from a place of what she and others have done to me, and done to my family, and done to my child, right? But I still have enough respect to not put her name out there. And, anybody looks hard enough, they'll find her. They'll know exactly who it is. But the reality of it is, I'm not going to be the one to put her name out there, because my goal isn't shame, guilt. My goal is truth. And, so fast forward, go back to my wife, Ashley, and how we talk and the things we went through. We have a healthy sexual relationship. It's fun. It's can be exciting. My wife is very, how do I put this? Very, I'll just say what I don't know. She's just very traditional, right? In her view of sex and things of that nature. I am much more expressive. I'm much more explosive. I'm not explosive, expressive. I'm much more free, I'll say. But somehow, some way, we found a way to match each other's energy. To I can be traditional man, and I can be myself, sexually speaking, with my wife, and all that works. But it only works because we can communicate that. It only works because we can get through we can overcome our own demons by having those conversations. And again, I'm not gonna go into stories because Lord knows I don't want to create no problems. But the reality of it is that I'm the kind of guy who's like, oh, hey, it's a Burger King bathroom, let's go. You know what I mean? Like, that's who I am, sexually speaking, whatever. My wife is much more of a, bedroom, romantic, candles, music, da-da-da. And so, both those needs can be met. And just recently, we had a night where I did all the things. I put the rose petals on the bed. I put the rose petals in the bathtub, ran her a bath, gave her a bath, whatever. We made love, all that good stuff. But that was meeting her needs and my needs because I enjoy that intimacy as well. But she's also willing to meet mine on other planes. And so that's why our relationship is so healthy. My trauma just didn't get undone one day, right? I learned and I asked questions of myself and I pushed myself to learn and figure out why and what and how. And I had to learn all those things in order to become the man that I am. And I am damn proud of the man I am, because the man I am is not like anybody else that I know. I don't, when guys sit around and talk about females and doing this and doing all that, nah, I don't care nothing about that. That's not even entertaining to me. Get away from me with that bullshit. You talking about a female's physical, aspects of her body. Okay, great. That's wonderful. Now let's keep the conversation pushing. That's just how I am. And I don't even entertain it because it doesn't interest me, because of the man that I've become. Right? And I still have things that I got to work on. There's still things that I'm still working on and I will be working on for the rest of my life. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because I know that I'm worth it. I'm okay with that because I know that my wife is worthy of having the best version of me. Right? And I truly feel that's something that we don't give enough credit to, is being the most authentic, most good version of ourselves. But I think you deserve to. I think we all deserve to. I think you should be able to walk around and feel however you want to feel. I think you should be able to, be with who you want to be with and do what you want to do, as long as it's not hurting anybody else. And everybody is respecting their relationship, and all the children are safe. I don't see a problem with that. We live in a world that's very much built for us to associate one, black and white, good and bad. I know a lot of people who profess Christianity who look at others with a very judging eye. Who are you to judge? Who are you to say that the person who's a homosexual is any more wrong than the person who's just laying up with their boyfriend or girlfriend? But we don't have those conversations, right? Because that's uncomfortable to us. Well, again, I'm not here for your comfort. I'm here for the truth. So, again, all these things play into my mind, and they play into my thinking every day. They play into the man that I become, the man that I am, and the man that I'm going to become. Right? And I'm super proud of that, because not everybody else has that strength. Not everybody else can look at everybody else in the world and say, go to hell, I'm going to do me because me is good enough. But I'm that guy. You can ask my bosses at facilities that I've worked at. You can ask people, companies that I've trained for. You can ask CEOs that I've spoken to. You can ask judges that I've spoken to. I don't give a damn who you are. I don't give a damn about your title. It does not matter to me. I am coming at you with the truth. Whether you like the truth or whether you don't like the truth, I'm coming at you with the truth. And the truth will be far more embarrassing to you than your ego can stand. And so, anyway, with all that, I just wanted to kind of give you insight into my mind, into a man's mind who has been sexually abused. It shapes us differently. We are built differently. We are built differently because we had to be built differently in order to survive. So, next week, we're going to start diving into this whole court situation, and we're going to start diving into some other things that are happening, right? As far as like looking at some of what happened. We're going to take a look at, my ex-wife's current relationship and what that looks like. We're going to take a look at the positions they hold. Just to let you know, like, he works for the federal government, very high security clearance, working with human beings. His career is based on human beings. Department of Health and Human Services, I believe. Level 5 security clearance and working in D.C. And I want you to understand the type of person he is and why that should frustrate and bother you. We're going to take a look at, my ex and her roles. And the fact that, she had the opportunity and the ability to take away people's children out of their homes, and who she is And then I'm really going to let you examine that and say, are these the people we need to have in power to control other people's family dynamics? And I'm going to let you make that decision for yourself. But that's, like I said, that's next week's podcast. That's next week's, story. I'll just give you some insight into that. But I'm also going to give you some insight into my home. I'm also going to give you some insight into things that went wrong in my house and my family. And we're going to talk about those things, and we're going to really dive into them and see how emotional intelligence really empowered and helped everybody involved to have the best life possible. Anyway, as always, please like, subscribe, share, and follow. Definitely the sharing part. I really don't care how many followers I have, although I do appreciate you all. The numbers don't really impress me. I'm not here to create numbers. I'm here to create change. So as always, be amazing, be you, keep walking in truth and integrity. And until the next time, I love you and I'll see you soon. There is one thing I forgot to add in there. I know I talked about Freemasonry, and I was going to go into that. And I know I didn't talk about it in this podcast, and I apologize. And I'm looking at trying to edit this thing, and that's not really my skill set. So I'm doing the best I can with what I got. But I promise you, I will go into that in the next podcast. I apologize. I didn't mean to leave y'all hanging. But I promise you, it's interesting. It's very interesting. But essentially, my take on Freemasonry has been changed dramatically based on some new things that came to light. And I really want to share that with you guys, and I'm eager to share it with you. But for today, I'm out of time. So don't want to hold you up anymore. As I said, I love you. Be happy. Be safe. Keep telling the truth. Keep making good things happen. And I will catch you on the flip side.